At the beginning of the story, we are introduced to Yenchong High School, a prestigious institution where most of the students come from wealthy families. Amidst this elite environment, we meet Mu Xiang, the female lead. Mu Xiang narrates her situation, sharing that she comes from a very poor family. She has no friends in her class, but it doesn't bother her. She is determined to focus entirely on her studies, secure scholarships, and ease her family's financial burden. Mu Xiang also reveals her secret admiration for Jiang, a fellow student in her class, though she knows she can never confess her feelings to him. One day, a girl in the school notices Mu Xiang glancing at Jiang and, out of jealousy, decides to bully her. The girl, along with her friends, confronts Mu Xiang in the washroom, mocks her, and warns her to stay away from Jiang. They lock Mu Xiang inside the washroom and leave. Desperate to get out in time for her next class, Mu Xiang calls for help. After some time, someone unlocks the door. Mu Xiang doesn't see who it is, but she notices a button from the person's shirt lying on the floor. She picks it up, wondering who might have helped her, as most students ignore her. She catches a brief glimpse of a boy walking away but can't identify him. The story then shifts to Kido Ma, the male lead. Kido Ma is wealthy, rebellious, and known as the school's bad boy. He loves his bike, calls it his girlfriend, and is a champion in Taekwondo. He even runs a Taekwondo club on campus, claiming no one can defeat him. One day, while Kido Ma is sparring with his friends, Mr. Go, a strict and feared teacher, arrives and summons him to the office. Unlike others, Kido Ma is unbothered by Mr. Go's intimidating demeanor. In the office, Mr. Go scolds Kido Ma about his lack of discipline, constant fighting, and poor academic performance. Despite the lecture, Kido Ma remains unfazed and responds with a smile. While this exchange happens, Mu Xiang enters the office to submit her scholarship form. She notices the missing button on Kido Ma's shirt and realizes he was the one who had helped her earlier. As Mr. Go continues reprimanding Kido Ma, Mu Xiang intervenes, saying her form is ready. Mr. Go acknowledges Mu Xiang's academic dedication and assures her of support for her studies. Later, as Kido Ma leaves the office, Mu Xiang waits outside to return the button. However, Kido Ma misunderstands and assumes she's about to confess her feelings with a love letter. Before she can explain, he dismisses her, saying he doesn't accept love letters. He walks away, leaving Mu Xiang speechless, still holding the button. In the next scene, Kido Ma is riding his bike when he notices a man harassing a young boy for money. Kido Ma stops and intervenes, confronting the man. After teasing the harassers, Kido Ma swiftly defeats them with his impressive Taekwondo skills. His high jump and swift moves terrify the men, forcing them to flee. The story continues with Kido Ma helping the young child, who thanks him for saving him. But soon, they realize they are surrounded by the man who returned with his friends. Kido Ma quickly devises a plan and tells the child to run in the opposite direction when he gives the signal. The child does as instructed, and both run in different directions. Since the group is focused on catching Kido Ma, they ignore the child and chase after him instead. Despite their efforts, they fail to catch Kido Ma, who skillfully evades them. Meanwhile, Kido Ma's two friends notice that he might be in trouble. One of them remarks that they will protect their brother. However, when they see a large group chasing Kido Ma, they decide to stay hidden and avoid drawing attention to themselves. The pursuers grow frustrated as they search for Kido Ma, who is hiding nearby, pretending to admire fish to avoid suspicion. Eventually, he runs back to his friends, and the three of them start talking. His friends express relief, saying they are glad the group didn't find them. Otherwise, they would have had to defend themselves. Suddenly, the pursuers return, and the three quickly hide behind a door. As the group gets closer, Kido Ma and his friends start running again. On their way, they grab objects they find lying around and throw them at the pursuers to slow them down. They even hand over money to shopkeepers for any damage caused during their escape. At one point, the group catches the boss of the pursuers. The shopkeeper demands compensation for the damages, forcing the boss to pay up. Meanwhile, Kido Ma and his friends split up, running in different directions. Kido-ma finds himself alone again when he suddenly collides with Mu Xiang, who is coming from the opposite direction. The impact causes both of them to fall into the water. Mu Xiang, who doesn't know how to swim, starts panicking and shouting for help. The pursuers, now afraid, realize that none of them can swim either. Fearing the worst, they abandon the scene. Seeing Mu Xiang struggling, Kido-ma quickly uses his inhaler before jumping into the water. As Mu Xiang starts sinking, Kido-ma swims to her, grabs her, and brings her safely to the surface. After saving her, Kido-ma looks at Mu Xiang and asks for her name. She introduces herself, and when Kido-ma begins to introduce himself, Mu Xiang interrupts, saying she already knows who he is. "You're famous at school, Kido-ma," she says with a smile. Kido-ma thanks her for saving him. Mu Xiang replies that he had helped her earlier, so now they are even. She leaves after that, and Kido-ma watches her go. Later, Mu Xiang is seen at home, reflecting on the day's events. She looks at the button she found earlier near the door, which she has carefully kept. The button has a design of Tech Wonder Boy on it, a detail that seems significant to her. At Mu Xiang's home, she explains how her family lives in a rented house and struggles financially. To manage expenses, they often cut corners and save wherever possible. Her father runs a small grocery shop, and despite their challenges, they find moments of happiness. One such moment is when Mu Xiang's mother prepares fish for the family after a long time. Just as they are about to eat, they hear Aunt Lin, their landlady, coming downstairs. Quickly, they replace the expensive bottles of oil with smaller, cheaper ones to prevent her from taking the better ones for free. When Aunt Lin arrives, she notices the fish and tries to strike up a conversation to get some for herself. However, Mu Xiang and her father start sneezing deliberately, making Aunt Lin lose interest and leave. Afterward, Mu Xiang's father praises her, saying she takes after him. Meanwhile, we see Doma enjoying his meal. He shares some of it with a dog, who takes the food to its puppies. Watching the scene, Doma feels emotional, realizing the dogs have a family, unlike him. On the other side, Kido-ma's stepmother expresses concern about Doma, who hasn't come home yet. She wonders if he's eaten anything, but Doma's father dismisses her worries, saying he's 19 and probably out eating with friends. The stepmother falls silent, hinting at her complicated feelings. Then something bizarre happens. Doma and Kido-ma's souls are mysteriously switched. The next morning, a cleaning lady finds Kido-ma's body lying on the road. She wakes him up, but he feels strange sensations and discovers he's not in his own body. Checking his reflection in the water, he realizes he's in Mu Xiang's body. Terrified, Kido-ma screams and runs away. Meanwhile, Mu Xiang wakes up in Kido-ma's body. Confused, she notices her voice and hair are different. When she looks in a mirror, she is shocked to see Kido-ma's face staring back at her. She screams loudly, unable to process what has happened. Mu Xiang, in Kido-ma's body, runs to her home and frantically tells her father, "Dad, I'm Mu Xiang. I don't know what's happening to me." Her father, puzzled by the boy standing before him, doesn't believe her. To prove herself, Mu Xiang reveals personal details about their home that only she and her father would know. This leaves her father even more confused. Before they can call the police, Doma, still in Mu Xiang's body, enters the scene. Seeing his own body standing in front of him, he starts screaming, which causes Mu Xiang, in Kido-ma's body, to scream as well. Her father is utterly bewildered, unable to make sense of the situation. Mu Xiang's father tells her to calm down while he calls the police. However, Doma quickly stops him, explaining, "There's no need to call the police. He's my classmate." Doma and Mu Xiang then flee the house. In a strange turn of events, two people, Mu Xiang and Kido-ma, found their souls exchanged after a mysterious incident. First, they thought it might be a dream, but when they tested the situation by trying to harm themselves and realized they could feel the pain, they concluded it was real. Mu Xin assured them that this was no ordinary world where souls randomly switched bodies. Both of them began to investigate. Kido-ma revealed he had checked his father's soul in his body and decided to check Mu Xiong's father as well. Nervously, Mu Xiong approached Kido-ma's father, who was critical and dismissive. When Mu Xiong tried to show him a doll, his father angrily threw it aside and insulted him. This made them realize Kido-ma's father's soul was indeed still in his own body. Later, the two friends discussed what to do next. They feared reporting it to the police because it might lead to experiments on them. They brainstormed and even swapped their phones to search for clues. Eventually, they guessed that the soul exchange might have happened because they fell into the river. To test this, they went back to the same river and jumped in, but nothing changed. They then thought about using an electric shock like in movies but backed out, scared of potential harm. Kido-ma jokingly suggested a kiss might reverse the exchange, but when he tried, Mu Xiong pushed him away, upset by the idea. Kido-ma apologized and they moved on. Sitting outside, they talked about their daily lives. Mu Xiong explained her packed schedule and how she couldn't skip classes. Doma reluctantly agreed to attend all the classes and even do martial arts training as Mu Xiong. Mu Xiong also convinced Kido-ma to do part-time work for her since her family had financial struggles. Though Doma wasn't interested, Mu Xiong's emotional plea finally persuaded him. Meanwhile, two of Doma's friends, Ling and Jiming, came to visit. They didn't realize Mu Xiong's soul was in Doma's body and were confused by how friendly Doma had suddenly become. To prove the soul exchange, Mu Xiong revealed personal secrets about them, shocking Ling and Jiming. Though skeptical at first, they began to believe the story. Later, Ling and Jiming dragged Mu Xiong in Doma's body to a shower room where she felt awkward. They teased her about Doma's sudden interest in her, unaware of the swap. Outside, Kido-ma waited, feeling mischievous about being in a girl's body. He decided to enter the girls' section, something he had always been curious about. However, the sight overwhelmed him, and he ended up with a nosebleed. While recovering, he suddenly got an asthma attack because he had forgotten to take his medicine. And with that, part 1 of their strange and chaotic story ended.